Welcome to Wildly Capable with Kate, a podcast made for those looking to unleash their wildest capabilities. I'm your host, Kate Durocher, a dating, relationship, and self-worth coach on a mission to help people build better relationships, starting with the one they have with themselves. In each episode, we'll dig deep, turn inwards, and embark on a transformative journey. Together, we'll break free from unhealthy patterns, rip through self-limiting beliefs, heal past wounds, and build unwavering self-worth, all to create healthier relationships as a result. Get ready to explore the wild, untapped potential within you. Are you ready to see just how wildly capable you are? Subscribe now and join us on this empowering adventure. Remember, your wildest capabilities await. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Wildly Capable with Kate. This podcast episode is one of my favorites that I've ever done because I am joined by the amazing Kevin Pasco. And if you don't know Kevin, then you need to. He's a relationship and masculinity coach for men and has over 86 million views on TikTok. His advice is resonating with men who want to skip over failed relationships and go deep with an incredible woman. He teaches healthy masculinity, emotions, communication, and leadership to men who want to break out of their feminine and step into their powerful masculine energy. Kevin offers a signature 6-week program, Masculine Path, and it's a masterclass on exactly how to step into your healthy masculinity as a man. In this episode, Kevin and I dive into everything related to masculinity and self-awareness and emotional intelligence and being a leader in relationships and being a healthy partner. And there's so much wisdom in this episode for both men and women to listen to. Men, Kevin will teach you how to show up as a great partner, how to get out of your wounded feminine and become the masculine man you were meant to be. And women, he will teach you how to spot healthy men, how to attract healthy men, and how you can also play a role in creating a better dynamic within your relationships as well. If you are looking to build better relationships, if you want to get out of the trap of continually dating the wrong person, this episode is for you. It will teach you so much. He is so insightful. He has so much wisdom to share. So Kevin, thank you for coming on, and everybody listening, here's the episode. Kevin, thank you so much for coming on Wildly Capable with Kate. I am so excited to have you. I know the people who listen to this podcast are so excited to have you. I've been following you for a while now, and I've even implemented some of your wisdom and advice into my own life. So I just can't wait to share it with everyone. So thanks so much for being here.
Amazing. Yeah. Thanks for having me, Kate. And thanks for being a fan.
So tell me a little bit. I know a little bit about you, but why don't you just tell us all how you got into doing what you're doing? Because you are a men's relationship coach. You coach on masculinity, emotional intelligence. You really just help men and people in general learn how to do relationships better. You and I are very similar. You're like the male version of me. But how did you even get started in this world? What brought you here?
Yeah. Well, first I have to say that I never actually wanted to do this. I was brought into coaching and especially working with men because I realized that I was doing a lot of things right in relationship, that at first it was seeing some friends and acquaintances that I know. And when I put up the first video on TikTok, which I think it was about a year ago, maybe it was a bit more than that. And the response was insane. Like the first video I put up on relationships, the first day it got 10,000 views and I was really happy with that. I was like, this is amazing. Overnight, it did another 800,000 views. That video ended up going to 3 million. Then the next one, the next day was another 2 million. And before you know it, like the response was just crazy. So I think in total now it's like 86 million something views or something in the last year. And all the content is about exactly what you said in the beginning. It's how can men be more masculine and give their women the chance to become more feminine. We'll talk about this later in the episode, but that's a really important piece of that. First, a man has to step into his masculine in order to allow his woman to be safe enough to fall into her feminine, right? Yes. So we can go into that a little bit later. But just relationship dynamics in general. Like I'm really lucky to have an amazing relationship. My partner, Lena, is 10 out of 10 amazing, but that it didn't just happen that way. Like we both put in a lot of work over the years. And when we found each other, which is 2.5 years ago, the timing was right. our values and everything was able to align where we were able to kind of like squeeze out the best of the relationship. And so when I'm thinking back of like, okay, well, I know that we are not unique, special people, that we're the only ones that can have this relationship. I think the dynamic that we have is available to everybody, but you have to have some pieces in place. You have to have some awareness. You need to know kind of what to do as the man. And then there's some work that your woman has to do as well. So when the both of you are open to that, then you can make magic happen. And so a lot of the videos and the content that I put out and just the clients I've worked with and the guys that are in my course called Masculine Path, they're kind of realizing like, oh, this isn't as much of a puzzle as I thought it was. Like we can reverse engineer this to get to where I want to go in relationship. And that's something that a lot of people want, because if you look at social media, you are going to see a lot of hurt people complaining and getting angry at each other and bickering and fighting. And you get this image that's reflected out that it's really hard. Dating apps suck. Well, I guess the world is over, right? It's over. Would have been awesome if we were born in the 70s or the 50s or something when, you know, true love existed. And I'm just like,
verbatim.
yeah. And I don't, I do recognize the struggles that both men and women have. I think there are some very real, valid concerns that women have around the behavior of men, and also that men have around the behavior of women. But we need to come from like a solution perspective and actually reverse engineer what you want, instead of just thinking, well, I guess this is the way it is, and I guess I got to be single forever, and I'm just stuck in hookup culture or whatever the case is. So I'm really focused on bringing that element to men. And there's a lot more support for women, but there's not as much for men. And what's really interesting is I get definitely some men commenting on my videos, but I get a lot of private DMs. I get like personal emails from guys that they don't necessarily want to openly say, hey, dude, I need some help, or what I really want is a deep, loving relationship, but they absolutely do. So, yeah, we can dive into a lot of these topics on the podcast. I really want to give some like valuable insights for anybody listening, whether you're a woman and you're kind of nodding your head going like, yes, the men need to do the work. Or if you're a guy listening to this, like, okay, what can you actually do? Because there's a lot of like things that you can actually take action on right now to make it happen.
Well, I think you have a really great perspective where it's like, it just takes some work. It takes some inner work, and then it takes working with your partner. And then it's this beautiful thing. If both parties are willing to do that work, you can create something so rare and so magical and so special. And that is available to everybody out there. But we kind of have this illusion that you meet your person, you fall in love, you get married, things are good. Once you're married, everything's solid. But in reality, there's a lot that goes into every stages of those relationships. So the fact that you have that perspective of, hey, I'm going to teach you the skills and the tools you need to get there, to build something beautiful, and then it will be something so incredible. But yeah, you're going to need a little bit of support. You're going to need to learn these things, which we are not taught. We are never taught emotional intelligence. We're not taught how to be in our feminine. I didn't even know what that was until probably 3 years ago. So speaking of like the feminine masculinity piece, you talk a lot about masculinity, and I've found that very helpful for me as a woman to listen to. But do you feel like masculinity, there's kind of like a decline in that in our society and culture today?
So I think there is a huge misconception of what it actually is. And I would love to break that down really quick so that, you know, especially when we're talking about energy, and I get this from some guys a lot. They're just like, dude, what is that? Astrology? Like it totally gets like passed over as like, what are you even talking about? And I break it down in a really easy way. So the best way to understand is both men and women have masculine and feminine energy in them. Okay. Women are not just feminine. Men are not just masculine. So you have both of them inside of you. What happens is that in order for there to be an ideal balance, the man should mostly be in his masculine energy, and the woman should mostly or maybe a 50-50 balance of her feminine energy. She still needs some masculine. If she didn't have the masculine energy in herself, nothing would ever get done, right? You still have to be able to achieve things, right? But you also as a woman need some magical feminine flow. And that is also true on the male side. So if you're a man and you are mostly in your feminine energy, a lot of guys are stuck in that where they are reacting to what's happening around them and they are letting go of their control of
Wow.
what they're actually doing in their life and where they actually want to go. So the masculine energy is defined by the biggest thing is like having a goal and a direction to go and then taking action and moving forward towards that. So you as the man have a sense of confidence. You understand where you want to go in life and you are taking action, like determined action to get there. So there is strength in that. There's safety for a woman to be around a man doing that. And there's such an amazing like personal purpose that comes out of a man when he's connected to that. There are a lot of men in my comments that I get DMs from and that I also work with in coaching where I call it being stuck in your feminine. And this is, we don't have to go into the whole thing. It comes from a lot of society, a lot of men being raised more by their mothers. I had the experience where my dad was just not around mentally when I was growing up. He was there physically, but he dealt with mental illness. And there were so many things that I did not learn from him that I wish I did. I ended up learning them later, but it would have been easier if I got that passed down from my father, right? Absolutely. And the reason why I didn't get that is because he didn't get it from his father. There's like a generational element to it, right? Totally. So a lot of men are being more raised by their mothers and they're being brought up in a more feminine flow in the world. And there's like a push down of masculine energy because the way that it's portrayed in modern society is like the domineering, huge muscle dude that is just like he's portrayed as like kind of a monster, right? Yeah. And then society is labeled masculinity as that. And then that's also given the rise to femininity. We don't have to go too deep into the conflict between those two, but there's a natural resting place in both men and women. And so men have been taken out of their masculine a bit. That forces women to be forced into their masculine because the energies are always balancing each other out. And there's resentment from both sides. So men feel like they're not in control. They just have to react to what's going on around them. And then women have to like resentfully pick up the slack. And that's where you see a lot of the complaining and a lot of like, there's no good men out there. And the like, what the hell is going on? And this this frustration, when in turn it can be the solution is more like, how do we get men into their healthy masculine, and how and through that we allow women to be in their healthy feminine, because in order for the woman to do that, she needs to feel safe. She needs to feel like, okay, I feel safe and supported by a man when I know that I can trust him. Is he going to do what he says he's going to do? Does he have a vision, and is he moving forward? So that is one of the biggest things of like, you are naturally masculine as a man, but everything around you is telling you to be more feminine and for you to be reactive to the world instead of for you choosing where you want to go. So I think when you get that frame, you can understand, oh, okay, well, I need to show up a little bit differently as a man if I want to get what I want. And the great thing about that is that naturally helps my woman, or if I'm single, it helps me attract a woman that is already or on the path to getting into her feminine. And those two energies work really amazingly well together.
Just incredible. I have 10 million follow-up questions because I think you were so spot on, where it's kind of like, it seems to me like we've gone in two directions. Either men are in their feminine more because that's what they've been raised as, or they lean towards this kind of unhealthy, really domineering masculine, like you talked about. And there's not a lot of teaching around what the middle ground is, because those masculine traits, I listened to a podcast recently where the guy was saying, I don't even like saying that a healthy masculine, because any masculine is healthy, where it's like those traits of being, clear, of being purposeful, of being direct, those aren't unhealthy things. It's just kind of what you do with them that can become damaging. So I love that you bring that up, where it's just this idea that masculine is bad and you can't be masculine, it's toxic, which isn't necessarily true. Masculinity is so healthy. It's just reframing the way that we see it and the way that we're taught about it. So with
Hmm.
that, do you feel like the feminine movement, the one that was extremely important to all of us women, every woman listening to this, something that needed to happen, do you think there were adverse effects where masculinity was kind of seen as something negative?
Yeah, I feel like it's a response to like my perspective when I look from afar, right? Because I'm looking from my viewpoint and perspective of like, I understand the energies. I feel pretty grounded in my masculine energy. I have a beautiful
Yeah.
woman who is also pretty grounded and balanced in hers. So we're kind of looking over at that sometimes and we're trying to figure out what's going on because
Mm,
our reality is quite a bit different than what, the people that you're describing have
sure.
as a reality. And my viewpoint of it is that it's like the haves and have nots. So the have nots are really upset and resentful and angry at the haves. And
Mhm.
it's this cycle of back and forth of like, a long, long time ago, it was actually really cool when I learned this, that there was a matriarchy in the world. So women were completely, fully powerful.
Mhm.
Men had no clue of what their power was. Men were basically only good for like gathering food and providing the seed to make a baby. The
Yeah.
woman was like, she was the powerful one because she brought through new life into the world.
Mm,
So men didn't realize that they had physical strength or that they were
mm.
good for anything else. There was a
Wow.
matriarchy that happened. Then over time, I don't know what the time frame was, a couple hundred or a couple thousand years. Then we moved towards a patriarchy, right?
Mhm.
Where the men basically took masculine energy and said, wait, we can use this to our advantage to domineer and to dominate women. And
Mm,
because we're physically stronger than them, well, that's good enough for us. Like
right.
that's all we need in order to get the edge against them.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I think the society has ended up. We're at the late stages of where that is sort of crumbling and it's not working anymore. So
Mm,
the matriarchy didn't work because men weren't valued as equal. Then we move into the patriarchy where men are seen as better and women aren't valued as equal. And now that is sort of starting to crumble and people are realizing, wait, actually both are pretty awesome. We need them both and they should really coexist and work together, which I think there was also another time in the world where that did actually happen. But we needed to go to the extreme of
mm,
both sides to figure out, wait, where's the middle? It really is the balance because you also need to be balanced in yourself. Like I
mm.
have feminine energy, right? It's not like I'm purely 100% of my masculine, but I'm in it right now on this podcast. Later
Yeah.
today, when I'm chilling and hanging out and just want to take a breather, I'm going to you drop a little bit into my feminine and just
Mhm.
relax and breathe. And so we're always going back and forth between the two. And so when you realize that the balance of the energies is really important, and it doesn't matter what's going on outside in the world. Like there could be 500 million people screaming on Instagram that they're having a horrible time, and that is part of their reality, but that doesn't mean that it has to be your reality.
Mm,
So if you want to have an amazing relationship with, if you're a woman, you want to call in a masculine man who's going to make you feel safe and comfortable, and you're going to feel like you can charge him up, you can nurture him, and you trust his direction and where he's going. You can have that now, regardless of if people are screaming and yelling about how bad it is out there. So that I think is really important. You have to be able to take back some sense of control over your life and your direction, because just because what's happening on the outside in society doesn't mean that has to be your reality.
right. We are not just victims to whatever is going on in the outside world. We create our reality.
Hmm.
I mean, again, spot on per usual. But how do you help a man who's maybe more in either like his wounded masculine or his wounded feminine? How do you help him create those healthy masculine dynamics within himself? What are some like activities or things that you walk them through?
Yeah. So a lot of the guys that I work with, they are more on the stuck in their feminine side.
Mm,
So I've definitely worked with some guys that are more on the toxic masculine. They can sometimes be harder to work with because the guy who's stuck in his feminine has at least some understanding of, oh man, like I'm not where I want to be, right?
mm,
Like there's a both energies are suffering, but one is a little bit more introspective and a little bit more able to ask for help, and that's the guy who's kind of has more feminine tendencies.
yeah,
If
makes
a
sense.
guy's more stuck in his masculine, which has probably been taught to him from his dad or his uncles and has been passed down, his cultural, upbringing is like The man is just should shut up and do the work. He doesn't need to argue or doesn't need to be reasoned with. And he just kind of gets to do what he wants. And he also shouldn't show emotions. And there's so many walls that are put up through that man. Like he could be hurt on the inside. He could be really screaming for a partner. He could be screaming for a break and just to take the weight off his shoulders. But he's usually very stuck in his ego, and it's very difficult for him to have any openness to doing work on himself until he has some sort of a light bulb that goes off inside of his head to create that openness. So there are definitely things that you can do once you have some self-awareness and realize, oh, wait, okay, the way that I've been taught isn't really working, and it's not my fault, but I have to be able to do something about it. So that's the first thing for guys that are more in the toxic masculine. If you are a guy and you're stuck in your feminine, and the way that I would describe that is that you're basically just reacting to life instead of having a plan, moving forward, using determination and confidence, and making that plan into reality. So you're kind of lacking self-discipline. You are probably a bit more emotional. You are maybe a bit passive aggressive. You're just, when things happen in life, then you react to what's going on, but you're not really choosing where to go first. You're reacting. So for those guys, I always recommend the first thing to do is have some self-awareness and to figure out what is actually going on and where are my emotions at, where are my thoughts at, and what have I allowed into my life that I don't actually really want it there, or this isn't the way that I actually really want to be operating. So you first need to have some self-awareness. And then once you have that, we can move towards, okay, well, I'm probably going to be lacking confidence. I probably don't really show up in a confident way. And I actually might judge other confident men because I think that they're getting the opportunities that I wish I had, or they're getting the woman that I wish I had, or whatever it is. So you are going to be stuck in judgment and resentment for that reason. And what you have to do is to be able to let go of that and say, wait, no, I can actually have what I want, but I need to work on my inner confidence. The next thing I have to do is I have to work on authenticity. And this is something I just did an amazing podcast the other day talking about this, where one of the things, and please tell me from the feminine perspective, I'd love to get your input, Kate.
Absolutely.
One of the most attractive things about a man is that when he knows who he is and he's authentic, even if he's a bit nerdy, or even if he's a bit of a geek, or it doesn't matter, like he's not afraid of judgment, and he's gonna nerd out or geek out with you about something he's really passionate about, and he's not worried about how is this gonna look, or do I look cool doing this?
1,000%. Yeah.
That's what I feel authenticity is like you having that confidence to show whoever you are really shines through. And that's what I think lights up a lot of women. They want to see that you actually like and accept who you are. And so a lot of guys stuck in their feminine, they're not doing that. They're not able to take a look at themselves and love themselves for who they are. And that's why I think they're taking a bit of a backseat to life. Like they're a little bit timid, and then they'll react to things because they have to, because it got put directly in front of them.
Wow. I mean, it's so interesting that you brought up the authenticity piece, because when I first met my now fiance, like I'm looking back now on the beginning stages of our relationship, and I'm like, why was I so drawn to him? Like, what was it about him that made me feel like a moth to flame with him? And it was the authenticity. He didn't care at all what anybody else thought. Like, yes, he'll take feedback, he'll always grow, but he loved himself and he showed it, and he showed up in a big way. And it was so attractive to me. So I've never thought about it in that light, but you're like, it's so true. It's authenticity is so attractive. And I think women, we tend to go towards the men who are more of like the quote unquote toxic masculine, because we are seeking those masculine traits. We just don't know how to discern between, okay, this guy's done some work, he's in like a healthy masculine place, or he just has some of those like more macho tendencies that you're drawn to because that's kind of what is innate to us, but you're not seeing maybe the unhealthy side of things. So in the inverse, how would a woman pay attention to what a healthy masculine looks like and actually only date those men who are in a like good, solid place? Their ego is removed. They're ready to grow. They're like a good partner.
So also the first step is self-awareness.
Mm,
Asking yourself the question, why am I attracted to this person, is really, really helpful.
yeah.
So you of course need to be able to look at things in a bit of a different light. If you need to be honest with yourself about why you're attracted to a person. So we all probably have friends or have seen people that date the same person over and over again, right? It's a different person, but it's the same like archetype. It's
Yes.
like they start dating, everything's great. 3 months later, she's calling you crying because he did this to me, and it's
Yeah.
like the cycle keeps repeating over and over. So there's some form of an addiction to that drama, and also to the archetype of who that guy is. And when it happens, one time, then 2 times, and then 3 times, we have enough data now to understand, okay, I don't think this is working. Like
Mhm.
the fourth time is probably not going to work. We need to realize, all right, why am I attracted to this guy? Well, I put him on a pedestal,
Yep.
and I've said, well, this is the type of guy that I'm really attracted to. And I'm willing to ignore the fact that he doesn't treat me right, or that he pulls away, or that he's not ready for commitment, or he doesn't even treat me that well. It's just he looks nice. Like he has muscles and he's tall, and that's what I want, and whatever. So having some self-awareness around what you actually really truly want is really, really like a big thing to do.
Mm.
Um, we actually did this, my partner Alina and I, unknowingly, because this was before we met each other, where we wrote lists down of what we wanted in a partner. And it's crazy the amount of things on that list that came true that we realized after we met each other.
Oh, that's
So
amazing.
the reason why this works is because in order for you to, first you have to realize, okay, maybe I'm not dating the right people. That's like step number one, is like, I'm going down the wrong path here. Don't judge yourself. It's fine. Take a step back and go, okay, well, wait, what do I want? If you're used to dating guys that are pulling away and are avoidant and are afraid of commitment, is that something you want?
Mm,
Probably not.
yeah.
So why don't you write down and get clear on yourself? Okay, well, I want a guy who's loyal. I want a guy who's actually going to be there for me. And I'm going to have to do some personal work to be able to be okay with a man who is accepting of me, and
Mm,
who is going to be and he's going to be there, which might scare me because then I can't run away. Right?
so spot on. You're
There's
describing
like,
me right now. Yes.
right. So there's always reasons why we do things, right?
Yes.
If you have a pattern of dating guys who are pulling away, you benefit from that, because
Hmm.
then you don't also have to go deep. You don't have to dig into yourself and figure out, oh shit, I got some work to do. Or maybe even if it's not about doing work, it's about like being seen in an intimate way,
Mm,
right? So
hmm.
that can be hard for people. And so that's why you date someone that's always pulling away, because then you don't have to be seen in an intimate place. If
Fine.
you get clear on what you actually want, and you realize, wait, no, I actually do want an intimacy. I want a
Mm,
partner who's not going to run away from me, and who's going to be there for me in the ups and the downs, then okay, I actually do want commitment. So I need to be able to do that myself, and I want someone to do that with me. So you can get really clear and write down exactly your list of what a dream partner is to you. And then when you'll obviously do this when you're single, and then when you're dating people, now you have a frame of reference for, okay, I know what I'm looking for. So I did this, like I got clear on my list, and then I was open but not super needy when it came to dating, and I dated different types of women.
mm,
So because I needed to see, like, is there someone that I'm wouldn't normally date that would actually really surprise me, or that would fit my list? And I would find, like, sometimes it was just like absolutely not, and I know right away. Other times it was like, okay, she's like 50% there, or 60%, or like there's enough to keep me interested, but
hard.
if I'm really being honest, I don't think this is going to work. And all it takes is like 2 or 3 dates, and you have a
Mm-hmm.
pretty good idea. And then the great thing is you can just communicate that and say, hey, listen, I don't think this is really going to work, but I think you're awesome. And whatever is just not for me. And
Yeah.
then you two separate, you avoid a whole situationship slash, debacle. And then you can be closer to finding your person. So getting the clarity first is really important, and realizing why you're making the decisions that you are.
I think it's interesting because you started both of those past two answers with self awareness. Like step one towards healing your masculinity, self awareness. Step one towards attracting a great guy, self awareness. And it's spot on. It's what I work with people every day on is relationships are a mirror. So if you're attracting somebody who is emotionally unavailable over and over, you may be emotionally unavailable yourself. Like what you were describing, that used to be me where I didn't want to go deeper. I didn't want to show up. I didn't want to do that work. So I attracted men who were not going to do it either. So speaking of emotional awareness and intelligence, which I know is something that you work with your guys a lot on, do you feel, I mean, there's been studies that have been done that say that women, we mature more quickly, we develop emotional IQ more quickly. Do you see that in the work you do? And how do you help a man learn emotional intelligence?
Yeah, I wonder. I haven't actually looked at the data or the studies on men versus women developing emotional intelligence. It's probably true because I think that this type of work for a woman. So, for example, like the work that you're doing when
Right.
you're working with women, there's more resources and coaching opportunities, and
Yeah.
it's more accepted in the
Yes.
community of women.
Very much
So
so.
we're kind of out on the fringe of like guys working on themselves, and
Mm,
usually it's more like um, guys were doing this in if you're really into self development, and let's say you're an entrepreneur and like your job is to get better and you're going to make more money and be more successful when you get better, that's going to bleed over eventually into your relationships.
sure.
So it always starts with like a core group of men that are just want to push and get better,
Mhm.
but then that's only a small subsection of the entire population. And now that's starting to bleed out into other men where maybe a couple of years ago, a guy could never even have had these thoughts or had these conversations just in general, let
Mm,
alone with their other male friends.
so
So
true.
it's starting to bleed over, and guys are starting to have some awareness to realize like, A, there's some things that I can do about this. And B, it's not cringy or lame or, I'm not going to be, if I'm not accepted as a man by doing this, then actually maybe those guys that are judging me aren't the best friends that I should have.
Mhm.
Or, those are the types of guys that are holding me back because they're stuck in a stigma of, guys just, shut up and do the work. Don't be emotional and drink beer and watch football on the weekends. Like,
Yeah.
and I'm not trying to push those guys down, but
Right.
what I'm doing is like we're pushing way past that. Like, if you want to have a deep, amazing relationship and like really have something where you thrive with a woman in, because that's another part of it too, is like a lot of people get in a relationship and then they feel compressed and boxed in. And there's a part of them that wants to leap out because you feel freer when you're single. And my thing is like, well, actually, I don't think you should do that at all. I think you should build a relationship where you can thrive and your partner can
Mm,
thrive and you both get what you want in the
mm,
relationship. But you have to have the self-awareness. You have to be able to talk about it. Like that just doesn't happen, right? Like you just have to build it. So a lot of the guys I'm working with, they're starting to realize that, and they can see how, for example, maybe they've dated the same type of woman over and over and it just hasn't kept working, and they're kind of banging their head against the wall. And so I'll drop some nuggets and get them to open up and realize, oh, I see the reason why I did that. It's because my
mm,
mom taught me that. Because
mhm,
when I was younger, I got some trauma, and I thought that's how you should treat women.
mhm.
And then I became a man, and then I just
Yeah.
kept doing that. So wait, okay, so maybe I should change what I'm doing. Maybe I
Mm,
should show up in a different way. And so
yeah.
that's all it takes. And it all comes from the self awareness. Going back to that.
I just feel like the work you are doing is so, so important. I work with mainly women. So I see women every day who are struggling because they've had their heart broken or they've been in that unhealthy relationship or what have you has happened with a man. That's why they come to me because they've been hurt by a man. So to be able to teach these men how to show up in a better way, how to show up as healthier partners, and how to show up for themselves and the world around them in a different way. It's just really, really powerful. And people listening to this know that my partner, he's also a coach and he works a lot with men. And when he posts a video about some sort of like self development event or something that he hosts with only men, he actually gets a lot of hate on those videos from what I would say are like the men who have not done that sort of work. They haven't looked internally, their egos are in the way. They make a lot of really inappropriate comments. They say some really nasty things. And I can't see a man who's done the sort of work that you walk them through as somebody who would comment those things. So just saying, I think the work you do is so powerful. It's so incredible and so, so needed. So thank you for what you do, because I work with the opposite every day who need it so desperately.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
And also, doing this can trigger other people in your life where by you doing this work as a man, what you're actually doing is you are reflecting to another man who's not doing the work what he's not doing. So it's like if you're around a bunch of overweight people and all of a sudden you lose weight and you got a six pack and you're muscular, you look great, your life's better, you start making better decisions, you're healthier, you're happier, like all that snowballs. The people that have not done that work hate the fact that you did it. Absolutely. Just because they're internalizing it. They're taking everything and saying, well, like I don't want to do that. And so I'm going to pull you down instead. Right. So it's a classic like ego thing. And luckily for me, I got over the hate comments pretty quickly. I haven't had too much of them, but when I went viral, first of all, and like nobody had seen my face on TikTok, I definitely got some crazy comments. And for me, I brushed it off very quickly. Like nothing like that has ever actually impacted me. Because everything is a reflection of what's going on inside of the person commenting that rather than what I'm actually doing.
It's almost like a compliment. It's okay if you're that triggered really by whatever I'm saying, it means I'm probably saying something true and good and helpful. What would you say to a man who's starting to do this work and everybody around him, maybe his family members, his own dad, his friends, they are not on that same page. So they are, questioning what he's doing, kind of poking fun at him, maybe even being mean. What would you say to that man who's embarking on this journey? What would you encourage him by saying?
Yeah. So some encouragement is really going to be helpful. So you can get it from me in the fact of me saying, dude, keep going. Like I didn't have, when I started doing this, which was really like 10 years ago. I've told my story a little bit before, but to recap it, my dad got diagnosed with depression when I was like 11 or 12, and it developed into bipolar disorder. And then he ended up passing away 10 years ago. So that was when I was 22. And so I'm 32 now. So really, even before he passed away, I started doing a lot of this work. I was going to therapy. Because I was in just a crazy mental state. It was really rough. And he was not able to be there for me. And so then he ended up passing away. And then that really I did 7 years straight of therapy, tons of different retreats and plant medicines. And there's a whole host of things that I've really dove into to do the work. And when I first started, it was difficult and hard. And I didn't even really know why I was doing it. Like now I know why, because life is so much better on the other side. But in the beginning, nobody really understands what you're doing. If you have judgmental people around you, or if your family or friends are just like putting you down, or you feel a sense of judgment coming from them. So people like me encouraging you is great, but you can't rely on that. So the best thing that you need to be able to do as a man is you can even pull in more of your masculine energy by just locking into a vision. And even if you don't like where you're at now, just imagine yourself in a great relationship and where you're more successful and you're actually happy with what you're doing. Even if you're really far away from that, feel into that vision, because any man and woman too, that's created an amazing vision and brought that into reality, it started as an idea first, right? Like you have to stay locked into that. The other thing that you have to do is you have to realize what is yours and what is other people's. So the judgment coming from other people is theirs. Yeah. And that has nothing to do with you. But one of the things I talk about, I've gone into this pretty much in a good amount of detail in my course, where men need to be able to set and hold strong boundaries with people. So I talk about it in the context of having boundaries with your partner, having boundaries with, for example, your boss, or things in your life. But also if you're getting judgment from people that has nothing to do with you, and especially if it's constant and if it's berating you down, you can set a boundary and not allow that into your life. Absolutely. So this is one of the hardest things when man starts doing the work, or really a woman too, it's not gender specific.
Mhm.
Someone starts doing the work, and people in their life start changing. They start disliking them, they start judging them, or whatever. You start to realize, wait, those people were there for me when I acted and showed up in a certain way. But now when I want to become better, all of a sudden they're not supporting me as much.
Mhm.
And that can be very challenging for someone, especially when it's a family member, right?
Sure.
To go through the experience of having the relationship change. But you're able to set boundaries and to tell other people it is not okay to do this to me.
Mm.
And you can do it out of love. You're not like trying to punish them, but
Sure.
you can create some, what is okay and what is not okay within your relationships. Because going back to what I talked about in the masculine, of if a guy's stuck in his feminine, he's reacting to life.
Mhm.
So in
Yeah.
order for you to step more into your masculine, you need to have a goal and a vision and start making moves towards that. And if other people are not willing to go with you on that, that is completely okay. That's fine. But you need to be able to separate a little bit from that and still continue and push forward,
Mm.
even though you're getting some hate or you're getting some judgment. So creating that separation is really key.
So challenging, but also so powerful because okay, I'm doing something right. It is challenging and triggering and upsetting people around me. That's actually a good thing because it shows I'm stepping into this healthier, higher, better version of myself. So I think that's really like sound wisdom. Seek the people who are going to encourage you and let go of the ones who are not. It's so good. And
Mm-hmm.
going back to kind of like the purpose a man needs to have. So I read the book The Way of the Superior Man. I don't know if you're familiar, but it
Yeah,
was a
it's one of my top
huge
recommendations.
same. I tell every woman and man to read it. I'm like, you all need to read this so you understand kind of what this dynamic can look like when you do the work. So for anybody who doesn't know, the book is about a lot of things, but one of the things is how like a healthy masculine and a healthy feminine can show up in relationship with each other and have a beautiful dynamic. One of the things as I was reading through that book was he talked a lot about how the author of the book talked a lot about how a man needs to have a purpose. And sometimes that
Mm-hmm.
purpose even needs to come before the woman, before the relationship. And when I
Mm-hmm.
read that, I was like, no, I do not like this at all. I need to come first. This can't be right. And then as I kept reading, I kept understanding like purpose, it really is a driving factor for men. So I was just kind of
Mm-hmm.
wondering like your thoughts around that and how you can make that make more sense to somebody who's totally new to any of these topics.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that concept 100%. I think any woman who believes that her man should put her first actually doesn't think that. It
Mm.
sounds really good in theory. What she's saying is like, I want you to make me important. I want to be considered and
Mhm.
valued in the relationship. I don't want to be one of your lower priorities.
Right.
So what she confuses that with is she's saying, I want to be number one.
Mhm.
And what that actually can do is it can throw a lot of men into their feminine, because when a man's purpose is just to like satisfy and do everything he can for his woman, he ends up putting her on a pedestal. He ends up making decisions based on what she wants, and takes himself out of the equation. And he starts to minimize himself. And what usually happens, and I don't know if you've seen this with any friends, or sometimes you see it online with dynamics of people on social media, is
Mhm.
the woman will start to resent him and start to not respect the man
Yes.
because he has lost his purpose and his
Mhm.
direction. So what actually, I think the clarification on that is, man's purpose is always number one in his life. He needs to have that strong masculine energy moving forward, where he wakes up every day and his purpose is, well, I want to make more money for my family because kids are
Mhm.
really important to me. And I want to
Yeah.
have a beautiful family where we don't have to worry about money, for example.
Mhm.
It's not like he's being completely selfish and his purpose is to travel around the world and do whatever the hell he wants.
Yeah.
It's more so like you can factor in your woman and your future family and everything, but that purpose comes first, and then taking care of his wife and his future kids, or his current kids, everything, that all blends in. And it's still a very high priority, but it's just not
Mhm.
the number one thing.
Well, it all stems from his purpose. Like he has to make that money to then care for his family. And I think
Mm-hmm.
you're spot on. Like it does create a resentment. I know when I've been with men who kind of are wish-washy or don't have anything going or they don't know where they're going, they have no direction, I don't necessarily know why this resentment builds. I know now that I've done this work, but in real time, I just knew I was getting frustrated. I knew I wasn't respecting them. I knew I felt like I had my life together more than they did. So the resentment grew and grew. For a dynamic, for a relationship that's maybe stuck in that, how would you tell that couple to get out of it? What are some things they can do? And just in general, what would a healthy masculine, feminine, balanced dynamic look like?
hmm So if you are in a relationship where the man is more stuck in his feminine, which has drove his woman into more of the masculine, and you brought up the resentment is so key. Like that's usually the feeling that comes up, and it creates this disconnection in between the two people. So we need to flip it in order to balance it. And there's two major things that you have to do. The first one, I hate to say it again, but it's true. It's the self-awareness. You have to understand as a man, shit, like I am more in these feminine tendencies. And instead of judging yourself for it and beating yourself up and thinking, well, I guess I'm not a good man then, you need to realize, dude, it's just the situation you're in. You can get out of it, but you first have to realize this is where you're at.
Mm-hmm.
It is also very important for the woman to do that as well. And so she has to match that level of self-awareness. And, you know, there's a part of society telling her that like the whole boss babe, do it all yourself. Women are so powerful. Women are so powerful. It's true. But the whole do it yourself mentality is just completely driving you into the ground. I mean, there's no way that's sustainable whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
And so first you have the self-realization to figure out where you're at. Then what you have to do as the man is you have to first, the masculine comes from within. So it's like a state of being. It's I'm strong, confident, and I'm able to push forward. And so I need to pull out, even if it's just like a little bit of that energy. Every guy has it. Like it's not gone. It's still in there. Pull a little bit of that out. But what you have to do is you have to go to your woman and say, I need you to allow me for even a small thing in the day, allow me to lead. I need you to just take one step back. And instead of you thinking, I'm not able to do it, you got to do the grocery shopping yourself because I messed that up. And I can't cook properly. So you got to do that too. And I can't clean properly because the dishes aren't done properly. So you need to allow me in one of those things, allow me to lead. And so you have to get that buy-in from her. Then what you do is you say, okay, I'm going to go get all the groceries and I'm going to take care of you there, just as an example, right? Like just one thing that a man can take action on. What you then have to do is just do what you say you're going to do, right? So that's how you create the trust is, you know, she's going to be able to trust you more when you actually do what you say you're going to do. If you say you're going to go get the groceries, for example, and you don't do it, or you didn't get the full list, or whatever the case is, now she doesn't trust you. Right. So you do that, and now she's like, okay, like he can do that. I can let back a little bit, and then you can start to take more, and then that's how you slowly work out of the old energy and into the new.
Great advice. And it is so, so true. It's the moment there's like a little breach in trust, even though it wasn't an actual betrayal or any like broken trust, but the moment he doesn't do what he says he's going to do in the small things, then we don't trust him to do what he says he's going to do in the big things. So I think that's really important to highlight. Kevin, this was amazing. I want to know if there's any last piece of advice or anything we didn't touch on that you want to make sure anybody listening to this podcast hears and knows and understands.
So for the men, if you do feel like you're stuck in your feminine energy, the worst thing you can do is judge yourself and make yourself feel like you aren't as much of a man, or that there's nothing you can do, or like anytime you get into a victim mindset, it really suppresses you. So instead of going through judgment, it would be awesome to take some of the concepts from this podcast, learn a little bit more about the masculine. If you want the easiest, like the quickest way to do it, check out anything I posted on TikTok. So like so many videos talking about this. You can watch a quick like 90-second video and just pick up the gist of this. So understand what that looks like. And then going back to taking little actions, that's all you need to do. Like you can't expect yourself to completely go 180 overnight. But what you can do is you can make one or two small little actions and get some buy-in from your partner, where you can then start to move out of it. And as soon as you get some feedback, where that feels really good. And now you're in a slightly different place because of it. You'll get the confidence to take more action and to move forward. If you're a woman listening to this and you're frustrated with, let's say your man is a bit too in his feminine, or maybe he's kind of like toxic masculine a bit,
Mm-hmm.
being able to allow him to open up to these ideas is really key. And he might not be open to it the first time you bring it up. So do not try and like shut down or label him as, well, he's just not going to get it if he's not open the first time. I think having some patience and just some understanding of that this is something that is so ingrained into men,
Mm-hmm.
where you don't even talk about this, like, let alone be vulnerable enough with your partner to, especially when it feels like your ego is being attacked because you're doing something wrong as a man.
Mm-hmm.
So have some grace and understanding that although you might not like the situation, there's a reason why it's happening. And I'm not saying that you should just let him off like guilt free. Like, he does have responsibility, but there's a reason why it's happening, is what I'm saying. So have some patience with that. If he has some openness to it and has some self-awareness around what he can actually do, then you guys would be great. Then you can just take baby steps and go from there.
Really, really just so incredible. Every answer you gave, I was like, yes, everybody needs to hear this. Yes, I needed to hear this. It's just so, so wise. And you can tell that you've actually walked the walk. Like, you actually practice what you are teaching to people, and you've gone through hardship to get to this place. So I just really, I'm honored to have had you on the podcast. I think this was an incredible, what are we at? 49 minutes. So thanks so much for spending so much time with us and sharing your wisdom. How can people find you, Kevin? How can people find you on social media? How can they join your courses, get coaching from you? Just tell everybody where to find you.
For sure. Well, thank you. I appreciate coming on. It's been a really fun conversation. And yeah, the best way to reach me, over the last year, I've done a huge push on TikTok. So it's Kevin X Pasco, Pasco is my last name. But I really want to do more on Instagram now. I feel like there's a whole group of people that I'm leaving out, and TikTok is awesome, but there's more to the internet than just that. So I'm going to be over on Instagram a lot more. Eventually doing a podcast on YouTube, but that'll come later. If you DM me on whether it's Instagram or TikTok, or just click the link in my bio, you'll see all the offerings. And if you want to reach out for coaching or anything like that, and then you'll see my videos as well.
Amazing. Well, I'm going to go send this to every guy I know and every guy I coach and have them listen, because this was just incredible. So thank you so much, Kevin. Thank you, everybody who tuned in to another episode of Wildly Capable with Kate. I'll see you here next week.